Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we are doing something a little different. Today we are talking about the 90s. The 90s, a decade of simple joys before smartphones, a time when life felt a little simpler, when you had to remember your friends' phone numbers or just wait until they showed up at your door asking if you wanted to go outside and play. Tamagotchis, pop culture, Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, Seinfeld, Buffy, and some of the greatest movies ever made, the 90s were truly a decade like no other. They're also the bridge between the old and the new, just before social media took over our lives and stopped us from spending so much time outside. And when we finally came back home, we had a chance to experience unforgettable adventures on our Pentium PCs, those grey and beige boxes that somehow work their magic with those floppy disks. Those games made me a gamer and shaped my love for video games. The graphics may have been primitive by today's standards, but those games were full of heart, creativity and imagination, and they laid the foundation of what gaming would eventually become. So today we are going to take a trip through my favorite games from the 90s, and if you're really old like me, you might want to stick around until the end, because I'll also have a few honorable mentions from the 80s as well, and let's not talk about my age. Alright, let's get started. And by the way, if you're new around here, I'm Raphael and I make Let's Play videos, and I'm also an indie game developer, and you can get my very first indie game, Camellia, now on Steam, a choices matter detective mystery with multiple endings, so the link in the description. And that being said, in a chronological order of their release date, let's begin with our list. Dave, 1990. Those games were dangerous, they were unforgiving, every single mistake could mean the end of your journey. But they were also thrilling, exciting, and they taught us the value of patience. And that's exactly what Dave was for me. This simple, charming, yet incredibly challenging adventure had me trying again and again and again. And you know what? I could not stop. The colorful brick levels are forever attached into my memory, along with those very harsh but unforgettable sound effects. And I'll never forget the excitement of finding a jetpack. For a few moments I actually felt unstoppable, of course until a monster humbled me or one wrong step landed me in water and bam, game over. Well, that was all we knew back then. No save system, no one holding our hand, no tutorial, just pure survival wrapped in an adorable package of pixel graphics, and for the time it came out, it was absolutely a magnificent thing to play. Prince of Persia, 1990. Not long after Dave, I discovered Prince of Persia, and for me it was one of the biggest demonstrations of the incredible potential video games had and what they could eventually become. For its time, Prince of Persia had gorgeous graphics, impressive animation, excellent gameplay mechanics, and an incredibly satisfying combat system. The level design was varied, the pacing was fantastic, and once again it was brutally challenging. And remember, there are no saves. If you fell near the end of this 60 minutes adventure, you had to start all over again. We had to deal with it, and we actually did. We actually chose to deal with it because we wanted to conquer it. We had to finish this amazing game. But what impressed me just as much was its storytelling. By today's standards, the story was very simple. It was told through a few short cutscenes and small pieces of text, yet somehow it worked. It made me realize that video games could be more than just gameplay. If games could already tell stories like this, imagine what they might be capable of in the future. For me, Prince of Persia was the beginning of that realization. It was the first glimpse of what storytelling in games could eventually become. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, 1990. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are a legacy of comic books, TV shows, movies, toys, which I had plenty of, and of course, video games. But for me, the game that made all the difference was the 1990 side-scrolling adventure. It was the game that got me hooked. I spent days beating it with every single turtle, although my favorite was always Raphael. Was it because Raphael is also my name? Maybe you'll be the judge of that. This MS-DOS game was a little clunky and a bit slow, but for its time it absolutely held up. More importantly, it kicked off a series of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games that has stayed close to my heart ever since. It was such a fun way to immerse yourself in the world of the Ninja Turtles, facing familiar enemies from the TV show as you stepped into the Turtles' shoes, even though they were always barefoot. While it certainly isn't the most polished game on the list, especially when it comes to combat or mechanics, for a 1990 release it was more than good enough, and honestly, just getting to become a Ninja Turtle and explore its creative levels made every minute worth it. Another World, 1991. This is where everything changed for me, in a big, way. Up until that point, Another World was, without a doubt, the most immersive gaming experience I'd ever had. It was only 1991, and yet I was seeing a storytelling and world building on a level I never thought possible. The cinematic cutscenes, the dramatic moments, the incredible art direction, the camera zoom in and out to enhance the story. For a 1991 game, this was cinema in a video game form. The story follows Lester, a young scientist whose experiment goes terribly wrong, accidentally teleporting him to an alien world. It was such a unique and captivating premise, and it opened the door to an unforgettable adventure filled with strange creatures, dangerous obstacles, and mysterious places waiting to be explored. And then there was the friendship, a beautiful relationship that develops naturally throughout this relatively short adventure, leading to an emotional ending that has stayed with me ever since. Another World wasn't just another great game, for me it was a revolution. It completely changed the way I look at video games. For the first time as a kid, I genuinely wondered whether games could one day become a storytelling medium as powerful as movies or novels. Looking back, that was such an innocent and hopeful thought to have in the early 90s, but Another World was the game that actually planted that idea in my mind. Home Alone 1991. While the movie is still one of many people's favorite Christmas films, not everyone knows there was actually a video game based on it, but I'm so glad there was, because it gave me memories that I still cherish today. As a kid, watching Home Alone was only the beginning. The experience became even better when I got to actually step into the shoes of Kevin McAllister myself. For the first time, I wasn't just watching him outsmart the burglars. I was the one setting the traps, tricking Harry and Marv over and over again in this charming little pixel art adventure. It was fun, colorful, and full of personality, with a cute soundtrack and an impressive attention to detail. Most of the traps you're using were the same ones that Kevin actually used in the movie, making it feel like you're truly part of the story. But it wasn't just a relaxing movie adaptation, it was surprisingly challenging. The clock at the top of the screen constantly reminded you that time was running out, creating a real sense of urgency as you rushed to set your traps before the burglars arrived. And finally, can we take a moment to appreciate Kevin's running animation? Perfection. WWF Wretlefest 1991. Growing up in the 90s, my older brother and I had a tradition. We'd grab some snacks, sit down together and watch WrestleMania. Good times. And then we were blessed with WWF Wretlefest. How awesome was that? Mr. Perfect, Big Boss Man, Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, and so many other legends weren't just wrestlers we watched anymore. They became the characters we got to play. Almost every week, my brother and I would head to the arcade for another WWF session, teaming up to take down every opponent foolish enough to step into the ring with us. For 1991, the visuals were actually nothing short of spectacular. The animations were actually smooth, and there were so many little touches like interacting with the environment that made every match feel exciting. Just look at it. I mean, if someone had asked me what a wrestling game from 1991 looked like, I would have imagined something incredibly simple with static crowd and barely any animation. But I mean, look at this. The crowd is moving, they're cheering, the arena feels alive. It's incredible. You can tell just how much passion and creativity went into making this game, and as a huge WWF fan back then, I could not have asked for anything more. Looking back, I honestly think I would have spent a lot less time at the arcade if it weren't for WWF Wretlefest. Instead, it kept bringing me and my brother back week after week. Mortal Kombat 1992. Hours upon hours, days upon days, me, my siblings, my friends, endless tournaments with a fighting game that changed everything. As much as I loved Street Fighter and still do, Mortal Kombat arrived with ideas that felt revolutionary. It was bold, it was edgy, violent, and of course the legendary fatalities. It quickly became one of the defining games of my childhood. By then I already knew and loved video games, but Mortal Kombat made me realize something else. I wasn't just someone who enjoyed gaming, I was completely hooked. The digitized character sprites looked incredibly realistic for the time, the martial artists all had their own personalities, and every character just felt memorable. Whether it was the mighty Scorpion, the Hollywood star Johnny Cage, the fearless Sonya Blade, or the god of thunder himself, Raiden, everyone had a favorite. I mean, looking back, I honestly feel like my gaming life can be divided into two chapters, before I played Mortal Kombat and after. Now, here's the thing about the 90s, we didn't have multiple controllers. Playing against your siblings often meant sharing one tiny keyboard, trying not to bump into each other's hands while pulling off combos or attempting those legendary fatalities. It wasn't ideal, but we didn't care, the game was simply too good. It was a breakthrough for its time, and we happily accepted all those little inconveniences just for the chance to keep on playing. So I guess there's only one thing left to say. Toasty! Aladdin, 1993. Back in the 90s, almost every Disney movie was a huge hit, and somehow many of the games that followed managed to capture that same magic, bringing the charm and personality of the movies into a beautifully crafted 2D adventures. Of course, one thing hadn't changed. There was still no save systems. Whether it was The Lion King, The Jungle Book, or my personal favorite Aladdin, every one of those games was a real challenge, and yes, a whole lot of frustration. While I enjoyed all of those Disney games, there was something about Aladdin that just clicked with me a little bit more than the others. Its level design was fantastic, the environments were beautiful, and for its time, the gameplay mechanics felt incredibly polished compared to many other 2D platformers. And then, there was the infamous Cave of Wonders carpet escape, the nightmare of an entire generation of gamers. It could probably make Dark Souls feel like a walk in the park. Okay, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but if you play this game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I must have attempted that level at least 30 times before finally beating it. I mean, decades later, I still feel like I need to catch my breath just thinking about this level. It was short, but absolutely brutal. Even so, Aladdin remains one of my favorite Disney games. It was fun, exciting, rewarding, and wonderfully designed. And although the technology of the time limited the audio quality, the soundtrack perfectly captured the unforgettable melodies from the movie, making the whole adventure even more magical. NBA Jam 1993. One of the greatest experiences of the 90s was definitely watching NBA games. It was the golden era of basketball with legends like Scottie Pippen, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, and of course, the one and only Michael Jordan. Unfortunately, when it came to video games, I believe the early 90s struggled to capture the same magic. I mean, long before NBA Live actually became a household name, we had games like Super Real Basketball, Double Dribble 5-on-5, and Bulls vs Lakers in the NBA playoffs. Don't get me wrong, they were enjoyable, but none of them truly captured the excitement of watching Michael Jordan do the impossible on television. But then, Midway decided to do something completely different. Maybe they knew the technology of the time simply couldn't recreate realistic basketball in a satisfying way, or maybe they just decided to throw realism out the window. I don't know what it was, but whatever the reason, they gave us NBA Jam, and in my opinion, one of the greatest sports games of the entire decade. No more traditional 5-on-5 basketball, no complicated strategies, just pure fun. Want to score? Why settle for a normal dunk when you can fly 3 meters through the air? Want to finish in style? Why not launch yourself from the 3-point line and slam the ball home in the most ridiculous way imaginable? NBA Jam was crazy, fast, over the top, addictive, and somehow, despite being completely unrealistic, it was the best basketball game I'd played up to that point. I guess sometimes thinking outside the box is exactly what makes a game unforgettable. Duke Nukem 3D 1996. As we crossed the midpoint of the decade, games began benefiting from better technology, bigger ideas, and increasingly creative visions. Then, 3D Realms found a special recipe. They took all of that, added a bit of spice, a whole lot of attitude, an unforgettable protagonist, and an enormous amount of testosterone. And the result? Oh my god, one of the greatest first-person shooters ever made. Duke Nukem wasn't trying to be nice, it wasn't trying to please everyone, it was edgy, it was rude, arrogant, crude, over the top, and somehow it was all incredibly entertaining. Explosions, big guns, muscles, alien invasion, and enough one-liners to quote for years.
Your face, your ass, what's the difference? Groovy.
Combination of Duke's confidence, charisma, and arrogance was unlike anything I'd seen before, and that alone made the entire experience unforgettable. I mean, taking down monsters is always fun, but humiliating them with Duke's attitude and one-liners somehow made it even more satisfying. It definitely embraced the unapologetic side of the classic action hero, and it did it in a brilliant way. When you combine that with fantastic graphics for its time, solid gameplay, creative level design, a great variety of weapons, and some incredibly memorable locations, I mean, you get a true classic. For me, Duke Nukem 3D will always be a 10 out of 10 shooter and one of the most memorable games of my childhood. Tomb Raider 1996. There is simply no way to talk about gaming in the 90s without talking about the one and only Miss Lara Croft. My favorite video game protagonist of all time, Lara Croft is like a combination of Indiana Jones and James Bond. She's intelligent, strong, athletic, determined, sexy, witty, charismatic, and yes, a true gaming icon. She's a hero, but still, if you get in her way, she won't hesitate to take you down in a brutal way. Sitting down in 1996 to play the very first Tomb Raider may have been one of the most important moments of my gaming childhood. This thrilling adventure took you through jungles, ancient tombs, caves, tunnels, mountains, and forgotten ruins, armed with Lara's iconic dual pistols and incredible acrobatic abilities. But what really made Tomb Raider special for me were definitely the puzzles. The original game introduced puzzles that felt incredibly clever and sophisticated, yet were still approachable enough that almost anyone could solve them with a bit of patience. The level design was nothing short of brilliant in my opinion. When you explore those enormous 3D environments, it didn't feel like you were solving a puzzle inside a room. It felt like the room, or the entire world even, was the puzzle. Every room, every hallway, every hidden passage, everything connected together into one giant mystery waiting to be solved. And in between all that, you had action, danger, and tension. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about Tomb Raider was its atmosphere. For most of the game, it's just you and Lara, deep underground inside forgotten tombs, miles away from civilization, completely alone, yet somehow you never wanted to leave. That overwhelming feeling of isolation made the adventure even more immersive. Sometimes it was peaceful, sometimes it was mysterious, and sometimes it was terrifying. And no, Tomb Raider is not a horror game by any means, not even close, but don't let that fool you because every now and then it could definitely scare the life out of you. And I was reminded of that all over again when I played the remastered version on my channel. Oh my freaking what? Jeez. Final Fantasy VII 1997. I bet Final Fantasy VII isn't just one of my strongest childhood memories, it's probably one of the strongest childhood memories for millions of gamers around the world. What can you possibly say about Final Fantasy VII that hasn't already been said? This masterpiece completely blew my mind. I still remember sitting there as a kid rubbing my eyes and thinking, can graphics really look this good now? Is this the new standard for video games cutscenes? Well, as a matter of fact, no, it was not the standard. Final Fantasy was so ahead of its time, and that's exactly what made it so special. It was years ahead of the standard. It achieved things that many developers probably didn't even think were possible. But the incredible visuals, the unforgettable cinematography, the breathtaking presentation, that was only the tip of the iceberg. That's what amazing, because more than anything else, Final Fantasy VII told one of the greatest stories I've ever experienced, not just in gaming, but in any form of entertainment. Its world building was extraordinary, the attention to detail was unbelievable, its dialogues full of charm, its characters felt real, and it was impossible not to become emotionally attached to them. I never felt like I was simply playing a game. It felt more like I'm meeting new friends, and together we are setting off on an unforgettable journey through a world filled with history, mystery, beauty, and life. One of the hardest part wasn't finishing the game, it was saying goodbye to it, and yeah, don't even get me started on that soundtrack. Marvel vs. Capcom Clash of Superheroes 1998. There are so many incredible games in this series: X-Men, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes, Marvel vs. Capcom Clash of Superheroes, and many more. While Marvel vs. Capcom is the one I spend most time playing, everything I'm about to say really applies to the entire series. They delivered exactly what every comic book fan hoped for. They captured the look, the energy, and the spirit of Marvel comics almost perfectly. They are so flashy, loud, colorful, and fast. Every fight felt like a comic book had jumped right off the page and onto the screen. I mean, just look at those battles, the visual effects, the dramatic cut-ins, the explosive special moves, everything was extreme in the best possible way. These games knew exactly how to make every fight feel exciting, and just like WWF Wretlefest, they also gave my brother and me another great excuse to spend our afternoons at the arcade, setting all our differences the proper way with one-on-one fighting games. Every character felt authentic to the original comics, nothing felt watered down, nothing felt out of place, each hero and villain had their own unique moves, faithfully recreated from the source material, making every fight feel like you were controlling the actual comic book characters. For me, this series was a masterclass in how to adapt comic books into video games. Good times. Silver 1999. Without a doubt, this is the most underrated game on my list. Many of you probably never even heard of Silver, and honestly, even today in 2026, I wholeheartedly recommend giving it a chance. Silver is one of the greatest hidden gems I've ever played. A rare treasure that so many people simply never discovered, and trust me, it really is a treasure. And just in case you're wondering, yes, it was re-released on Steam in 2016, so just saying, putting it out there. Why do I speak so highly of Silver? It's a medieval fantasy RPG set in a world of knights, mages, monsters, and magic, but that's not what made it special. What made it unforgettable was the adventure itself. First of all, yes, it's a full RPG with enormous amount of dialogue, and excuse me, this is all voice acted? Hello? Serious? Seriously?
They were waiting for me when I got back from the fort with supplies.
Do you have any idea how rare that was in 1999 with so many characters, so much dialogue, and everything is voice acted? And the incredible part is most of the voice acting was actually very, very good.
I am the Mayor of Rain. How dare you approach me without prior invitation?
Then there's the world of Java, where the game takes place. Java is absolutely beautiful, breathtaking. Every new location felt like somewhere you genuinely wanted to explore. The forests, the castles, the villages, the landscapes. It was a world that constantly rewarded your curiosity. And despite being an RPG, Silver actually never overwhelmed you in terms of scale. It managed to stay just contained enough. I mean, the game really did have almost everything you could want, whether you preferred swords, axes, bows, magic, or even hand-to-hand combat. The game let you play your own way, but still it wasn't trying to be a 100-hour epic. It was a focused adventure, around 12 to 16 hours long on average, long enough to tell a fantastic story, but short enough that it never became like a grind. That made it actually incredibly approachable, even for people who weren't huge RPG fans. The gameplay was fun, the companions were memorable, you get to choose who to travel alongside with, and who fights beside you, and who become part of your adventure. It's a game overflowing with charm, wonderful world building, a fascinating story, and perhaps more than anything, you can genuinely feel the love and care that went into making it. Just magnificent. Worms Armageddon 1999. Finally, we arrive at the last game on my list, the incredible Worms Armageddon. Wow, just wow. If there was ever a game that taught me that video games could be absolutely hilarious, this is the one, guys. This was it. Worms Armageddon was pure comedy. The voices, the sound effects, the ridiculous weapons that were sometimes incredibly useful and other times just seemed to exist purely to make fun of your opponent. Everything about it was clever, charming, and just endlessly entertaining. The gameplay might look simple at first, but it was exactly as deep as it needed to be for this type of game. Smooth, easy to learn, difficult to master, and above all, incredibly fun. But my favorite part? Those tiny worms. Their voices are still some of the funniest I've ever heard in a video game. I mean, that little giggle as you casually dropped a stick of dynamite next to your opponent. I remember laughing hysterically the first time I heard it. It was just brilliant. The whole game was wild, explosive, cartoonish, adorable, and somehow completely addictive. My brother and I spent countless hours trying to blow each other's worms off the map, and it's not exactly something I expected to become such a big part of my childhood, but thanks to Worms Armageddon, it absolutely did. And there you have it, the 15 games that made me the gamer I am today. And for the older folks in the audience, like me, here are a few honorable mentions from the 80s that came out a bit too early to make it to this 90s list. Looking back at this list, it's incredible to see how much gaming has evolved over the years, but one thing has never changed: the memories. Those games made me laugh, they challenged me, they amazed me, and most importantly, they made me fall in love with video games. So, what did you think? Did this video take you on a nostalgia trip? And what games made you a gamer? I mean, I genuinely love to hear your picks in the comments if you think there was a game that should definitely make the list and did not. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.